Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today is May 15th, and I've forgotten what sections because everything is kind of willy-nilly. Today's mostly business.
And security.
And security, that's right.
A lot of business, a lot of security. This is probably going to be a little longer than the government news on Monday, but we were kind of zipping through a lot of the samey news from, Monday. But our first story today is about FTX and more crypto.
The first two are like positive. Good news.
I like this because we talked about on Monday the SEC and Gensler, and he's like, he's running all in full cylinders. Like every crypto is a scam. But, in this case, customers are going to be made whole from FTX. This is really interesting.
FTX customers poised to recover all funds lost in collapse, plus the people will get interest.
118%. So you're going to get back 118% of whatever you had in FTX when it collapsed, which is wild. Although there are some people that had, like, say, Bitcoin in FTX. And so this is a little misleading. If you had one Bitcoin in FTX at the time of its collapse, one Bitcoin is worth about $20,000. Today, when we're filming this, one Bitcoin is worth about $65,000. So when we say that you're going to get 118% back, you're not going to get a $65,000 Bitcoin back. You're going to get about 22,000. If you'd just been holding the whole time, you would be up 60.
Diamond hands.
Yeah. But it turns out that a lot of the stuff that FTX invested in, other than Bitcoin, actually was not a terrible investment. And so, again, it's just like, I'm sure that Sam Bankman-Fried is looking at this like, I'm going to have to spend 50 years in prison because we made everybody, all the investors, whole. That is a gross oversimplification. There was a lot of things that were really done incorrectly. But I also think this is going to make Gensler's, crusade against crypto a little more difficult, because had crypto been run more correctly, like, say, with a Gensler or a Jamie Dimon at the helm, then that's just the right amount of screwing the customers and mafioso style running a business in order to make this whole crypto thing work, as opposed to the penny ante Sam Bankman-Fried, type of criminality. Right? Isn't that how that's meant? I don't know.
Oh, this is our other really good news story this week.
This is our other penny ante criminality. This is a lot of fun.
PlayStation reverses course on Helldivers 2 PlayStation Network account requirement. We were all very upset about this. Wendell, you came in last week on Friday. We were getting ready to do the news, and you were like, "Did you see?"
I got in on this, and it's a little bit tempest in a teacup.
Yeah.
But the really dumb thing here is that there was a lot of miscommunication. The Arrowhead Studios apparently had a contractual requirement with Sony that you would have to have a PSN account in order to play Helldivers. And so on launch, some kind of technical issue or glitch, so the team says, and you weren't allowed to, or you couldn't necessarily link your account to the PlayStation Network. So they made it optional. And Sony's webpage said it was optional up until Thursday. And then, like, really late on Thursday, before this announcement, the website changed. Interestingly,
the Wayback Machine coming in clutch again.
To say that it was required as opposed to optional. The other problem with this is that there's still 117-ish countries where you could have bought Helldivers, but you still can't play. Like, it's blocked in those countries. And so that's
you can't get a PlayStation account in those countries.
Even though Sony has walked it back, those people are still languishing. So there was review bombing, and then now the reviews have gone more positive. But as of the time we're filming this, for countries where PSN is not available, or it's weirder, like you physically have to have an Xbox, even if you're playing on Steam, in order to get a PlayStation account, which is weird, you can't buy this game in those countries. I don't, like, from my point of view, the game and like, whether you agree to it, making an account, is it a big deal? Is it not a big deal? It doesn't really attack the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is that people either like or don't like the PlayStation Network. The PlayStation Network, the PSN, should provide value on its own. And by forcing people to use PSN, Sony's able to kind of go to their shareholders and say, look, we're doing a good job as a company because people want to use PSN. The PSN line is going up. When the reality is people like Helldivers, and they're willing to tolerate the PSN because they like Helldivers. That is not the same thing. Like if you're a Sony shareholder and you're looking at, is the company doing well? Do I want to be a Sony shareholder? I would have a very different perception of how the company's doing if I look at it as, no, you're just forcing them to do this. We don't actually get very much value from having forced them to do this versus you built something they actually want to use. And I think Sony suggesting that the PSN is something that people actually want to use is a kind of fraud perpetuated against Sony shareholders. Like, it's just like Microsoft with the start menu thing.
We have an update on that too.
Yeah, Microsoft shoving a bunch of crap in the start menu, and it's like, no one wants this. But it does make some data on some dashboards look good. And so if you're an idiot shareholder that is just a babe in the woods, fools and their money are soon parted, and you look at that and you say, oh yeah, Microsoft's doing great. Line's going up in that engagement. You should know there's a dark side. They're holding you hostage, in my opinion.
I don't even know if that's an opinion so much anymore. I feel like that's just truth.
I'm hedging against lawsuits, Krista.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of
Lawyers
which,
don't watch this show. Microsoft Xbox cuts aren't over yet, report says.
and this is again just like so. Microsoft bought all these studios.
Oh,
And they said this is going to be great. It was not great. They fired everybody. This is
a lot. Carnage.
1 year. Somebody dug up the what was it? Was it? I can't remember if it was Tango GameWorks or Alpha Dog Studios or one of those. They acquired just about a year ago, and they put out a lot of press, and they said, no, this is going to empower this team to do really amazing things with the power of Xbox behind. And now they're just all gone. It's like, wow, did it really turn around that badly in a year? A year, really? So a lot of those studios are just closing.
These companies that acquire these other companies, that's always good, right? Like,
yeah, just close. It's all good. This is also a lot of fun.
Deep fakes of your dead loved ones are a booming Chinese business.
We have covered this, like one of the first episodes.
Let me die.
Yeah.
I don't ever want someone to do this to me.
It's like, what if you have an interactive grave? Like you go and it's like, here's somebody's headstone.
That's exactly what they do in this article. So
Yeah.
they said that it's really common in China after a relative passes away. It's like you kind of set up like a little picture of them in your house, and they're selling kind of like AI-powered picture frames, but the person talks to you when you talk to them.
How about, it just takes all the documents in the AI. It's like, somebody passes away and it's like, hey, where was the documentation for this? And it's like, oh, that's in the safety deposit box 61A. And it's like, okay, that sounds good.
It's not quite that advanced. It's taking like old voice clips, and then it'll ask you things like the guy in here said that I think it was his mother who had passed away, and she would say things like, have you eaten today? Or like, that's nice. Like, not anything really specific, but still disconcerting, kind of weird.
I kind of like the idea of feeding all of that data to a large language model, and it's like, did you know that there's shares of stock in this that haven't been claimed?
Just says really intense things, off-putting.
We hid some bearer bonds in the walls. Don't forget to look for those. It's just,
I hope you didn't sell my antiques.
I've got a lot of antique sewing machines. Would anybody like us an antique sewing
That's
machine?
for patrons only. Patron and floatplane.
Give it a good home, like really like Sears. It's like the finest that you could get from the Sears and Roebuck catalog in the 1960s.
You could probably sell those at like a peddler's mall. I always see them there.
I'd like to see somebody give it a proper lubrication and really just enjoy
Actually
it.
use it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, because that was like, I don't know, passing down the sewing machine. It's like, look at this amazing thing.
Does anyone in your family sew?
Oh, the entire, yeah. They were all prolific.
Well, no, but like, does anybody like currently, like your generation or younger? Okay.
No, God, no. So, ain't nobody got time for that. Speaking of which,
Google will exit prominent San Francisco waterfront office tower.
this is apparently 100,000 square feet of office space. This is apparently a trophy office space. Or, I'm sorry, 300,000 square feet.
That's a lot of square feet.
And I've been meaning to post it to the Level 1 forums. I read it was leaked. I don't know if they would be unhappy that I post it, but I read a really great, it was a plan, it was a business plan. It wasn't an article or anything like that. It was literally somebody paid an architectural firm a bunch of money to do an earnest evaluation of, we're going to turn a building like this into residences so that we don't lose our shirt on real estate. And that was the document that turned the tide for me on, we've got a deeper problem here. Because a lot of these buildings are not designed for
resident. I mean, think of all the plumbing you have to do. Like
plumbing, fireproofing, electrical distribution, the way that these buildings are put together, like even just double layers of drywall between palatial sized units on each floor, the walls and the floor cannot support the weight properly, to say nothing of plumbing, kitchen, air distribution, and all of the other requirements of that. So the leaked thing that I read, there was like Appendix 2 was, if we could convince the city to relax these codes, would it work? And the answer was 30% maybe, 70% probably not. And because it looked specifically at like fire code and fire suppression systems.
Also, just yeah, like you're talking about just things like weight. That's not a
Yeah.
that's not a code thing. That is just a reality of the physics thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it was like, oh, this building is especially a bad choice for this because it uses a cantilevered something, and because of that, when we have this kind of weight distribution, we're just screwed. And so
that's not a code problem. That's just a physics problem. That's how the reality is.
yeah, it is. But it also
What an
means
interesting design question, though. How do you design a space that can work for both residential and commercial?
well, maybe we could transform that into like a level 1 into like a level 1 video, because it made me think of like some of these older buildings, like the buildings from like the 60s and 70s, were so overbuilt that they are much more amenable to converting from commercial to residential because it's so much more steel and concrete and everything else. Whereas these buildings were designed to be as inexpensive as possible, and they're made mostly of steel and glass. But when you fill them with residential things, then the natural fire suppression properties of steel and glass go away. And that becomes a bit of a problem when we're talking about repurposing a building from residential to commercial. And so now, as a matter of codes, should we build a building to last 100 years as opposed to it's going to be amortized over the cost of like 20 years? Like, it's a whole rabbit hole you can go down that is a whole side distraction conversation that I'm just filling airtime with.
Yeah, now I'm thinking like, oh, you'd have to have special like staircases for people in every apartment to be able to access. I bet there's like, how much time does it take for someone to get from their apartment to that stairwell? And like, wow.
That was one of the footnotes in the report that I read, was the fire exits are all built, to the nines, so that like people won't die. And the distribution of the stairwell towers was like, hey, we could actually augment the stairwell towers with some more steel, and that would increase our load bearing ability by like 17%. And they were like, does that get us close enough to be able to? The answer was no.
Not even close, no.
So it's like, we're going to creatively use the stairwells in order to do this with this engineering.
I would love to be the architect on that. Well, actually, I wouldn't, because I would be miserable. But like, I can just imagine being in that meeting and like
somebody. I mean, this was the thing that was well over 100 pages, and I read every word of it, and it was just incredible because it was just like, yeah, we attack this problem every different way. Somebody paid a lot of money for that document for some building in some city somewhere. I think it was
architects ain't cheap.
New York or California or somewhere, and at the end it was just like, I think this is going to be a write-off. And it's just like,
whoa.
Wow, okay. Sounds good. 'Cause even if we give people an 8,000 square foot apartment, it ain't going to work. And it's just like,
incredible.
That's amazing. But you know what's not amazing?
Smart home startup Brilliant has run out of cash, which means lights out for its light switches.
Well, they're going to keep the light switches on, ironically. But yes, they are out of money. This was a company that was trying to do a smart home that was not as ham-fisted as some of the other smart home companies, where they suddenly decide that your garage door opener needs a monthly subscription or your heated seats need a monthly subscription. Spoiler, that doesn't work out. This one is not that egregious, but they still didn't have enough money because the well had been poisoned so badly by all of the other companies. So for a while there, it looked like venture capital and startup and AI FOMO was going to drive the next big, money revolution. Like, we were coming out of I love reading about the late 70s into the early 80s into the late 80s, because in the late 70s, with the price of energy and everything, a lot of people were freaking out. And then computers happened. Computers completely changed the economy and opened up a whole new world of possibilities and were very disruptive. And suddenly the economy, doubled, tripled, quadrupled overnight because of the new levels of productivity. And here the same thing looks like it's happening with AI. It's like, wow, we're going to save society because the productive output with AI is happening as it happened with the computer revolution and the internet all over again. But then
venture firms double, then halve in stunning reversal.
So line went up. And then line went down real fast.
Is it? I can't see very well from here. Was it like 2020 or 2021 that they started going down again?
Yeah, it's just like it got up here, and then but immediately, like in this amount of time, we're back down to over here, which is a long time ago. Interesting. Did you work for a startup company or on a .com or some kind of project recently? Share the triage below, because I'd just be curious to know. That'll be really interesting. You know what else is really interesting?
The Boeing drama.
The unfolding Boeing drama. People who disappear, whistleblowers. Ars Technica has this headline.
Boeing says workers skipped required tests on 787, but recorded work as completed.
Well, that's because they're overworked, and also, you know, the work ethic and everything else. Like, we're just hollowing things out from the inside. Kind of like building high-rises.
More productivity, but less pay.
Line has to go up. Oh, here's the Microsoft article.
Yeah, Microsoft closes Redfall developer Arcane Austin, Hi-Fi Rush developer Tango Gameworks, and more in devastating cuts at Bethesda.
Yeah, this is just why. Why?
Does the line go out?
You can get a credit apparently of some kind for something. Just why?
A token. Some Chuck E. Cheese token.
This reprioritization of titles and resources means a few teams will be realigned to others so that some of our colleagues will be leaving us.
Realigned. That's such a soft word.
It's weird, too, because when you say reprioritize, it makes me think that we're going to take the people we have, and we're going to focus all the people we have on finishing these titles. That
The Elder Scrolls 6.
We want to get out the door. When in reality, it just means,
they're gone.
Could also mean generative AI is going to replace a lot of jobs.
Oh.
But they got rid of entire studios, so that means they're just going to hand the intellectual property to other teams, I think. So,
I think did we repeat that story?
No, I just misclicked. Speaking of things that shut down, first it was the Python team, now this.
The Google graveyard expands again. Google Fit Dev APIs shut down set. Fate of Android and Wear OS apps go unannounced.
As Google usually does. Like, you just wake up one day and it's just like,
gone.
oh, Google's decided they're not going to do Gmail anymore.
I don't think it's going to be, I think they said at least a year. 2025 was when the final date was, but I mean, it's already out of like a lot of their products, apparently.
We've decided we're not going to do domains anymore. How do you know that? It's like, you can guess it. And then like 6 months later, it's like, oh yeah, we're out of domain names. It's like,
yeah,
we're not going to do thermostats anymore. It's like, well, but thermostats are usually good for like 10 to 20 years or more. I've got a century-old thermostat that's actually wired into my new modern system, and it works great. It's a century-old because it's filled with mercury. There's not a lot to break. Okay, well, the spring metal actually could wear out, but just so happens to still work fine and still be reasonably well calibrated. But I'm just saying that it's not unreasonable to expect a thermostat to last a century, and this is the world we find ourselves in.
Planned obsolescence.
Speaking of disappointments in the world we find ourselves in.
San Francisco is seeing an uptick in complaints about bed pods. Have you ever seen the episode, or not episode, but it's like, I've seen it on YouTube where it's like those Hong Kong, like tiny little apartments. That's basically this, except they try to make it sound like luxury living.
So as lawless as San Francisco seems to be in all of the stories that we do from week to week, codes and enforcement shut this down. So some investment companies took some brownstones, I guess, and retro converted them into this, and codes and enforcement showed up and just said, you can't cram people in here like sardines. Like, where's the bathroom? One of the doors locks the wrong way on the way out, so like you can be locked in and you can't get out. They said it was a
fire safety issue.
yeah, literally, that's federal law. Like, people have to be able to get out without a key. Like, that's a thing.
These are also $700 a month.
Yeah, just
which is wild. Just literally like, yeah, a pod.
Yeah, not both, not top and bottom, just top or bottom.
This is like the hostel I stayed in on the AT, but like you paid like $20 for a bunk. Like, come on,
$700 a month.
Yeah,
yeah. This is, just why? But one of the operations is shut down completely. And one of the other ones is renting only every other pod, which apparently was enough to make the code people happy. But they're going to come back around and try to decide if 2 people per pod is okay, or 2 people per pod unit. So 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom is okay, because right now it's just 1 person per pod pair, and the other one's shut down. So I guess okay, but
I mean, we need probably some denser housing or just cheaper housing, but like that just seems insane to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
And I'm kind of a hippie. I kind of dig the commune thing, but like I don't know if I could do that.
Well,
That's a step too far. And $700 a month, come on.
I should have
That's a
included
joke.
a link to it, but I sent you the video of that house that was 400 square feet and can be delivered on a truck. That was pretty nice.
Oh, I did. I sent that to my husband too. But then when we looked at it, we were watching it, and I think at the end it tells you the price, and it was like 100 to 125K. And I was like, whew. It was a tiny house. It was really nice. It had a ground floor bedroom, which was nice, and then it also had like a loft space.
Yeah.
But whew, it was pricey.
But a hot water heater, fully finished. Like,
Yeah, ready to go. Like could be towed to your house today.
400 square feet, just magical. Now that's probably installed, delivered in the whole 9 yards. I wonder if you could get it for like 60 and DIY some of those things.
Yeah, I wondered that too.
Would that be more palatable?
We'd have to put in a second septic system for that, but it was cool.
The tiny guest house.
Yeah.
You know what else is really cool if you're an Apple shareholder?
Apple announces largest ever 110 billion share buyback as iPhone sales drop 10%.
Yeah, they got to make the line go up. Might as well use their cash to do it.
Is this a section with Google's? Oh, okay, well, I don't know. Well, we'll get to that. Anyway.
I don't know, Apple. We're going to have some thoughts on the Apple iPad announcement. Don't worry, that's coming.
Oh, yeah. Tesla quietly removes all U.S. job postings. This caused a bit of a stir this week.
They've been doing the slow purge, so it sounds like we're repeating ourselves every week, but it also seems like they're laying off units, a few per week. And so we lost some more units this week. Our condolences go off to you. It's like a hiring freeze after weeks of quote-unquote hardcore layoffs. That's what the sub...
Did we cover last week, too, how they abruptly cut off all the interns as well?
Yeah.
That's not a good sign.
The interns were all set, and then it was just like, nope.
So a lot of people had already like arranged housing, gotten flights and stuff, and then it was like literally the next day they were like, no interns.
Yeah, this says more than 20,000 people have been laid off in the first round of headcount reductions, Bloomberg reported. Now, some of these layoffs, you're supposed to put in a warn notice, and so they may have... one of the articles I read about this said that they hadn't done some of their warning paperwork correctly to warn the states about unemployment benefits and that sort of stuff. So, I don't know. There's probably more story about what's going on at Tesla with the layoffs than is here, but this kind of thing is happening at Google and other places as well. So you'd think that earnings would be way down. So like Google was one of the hardest hit, and so Google's not doing well financially, right? Well, they got their first quarter earnings in, so you would think they're not doing well. What of the people who have been left behind at Google, the people that were not laid off?
Google employees question execs over decline in morale after blowout earnings. Turns out Google's actually doing pretty well.
We've noticed that all of our coworkers are gone, and yet we have blowout earnings. Would it have been too much to hang on to those teams? Like, I really liked the work the Python team was doing.
If you read one story this week, I would recommend this one because the constant tone deafness of these executives, like in their answers, is just unbelievable.
Well, I got laid off from Google, but my investments in Google vested, so I guess it's good because line went up.
Yeah, they're like, we understand people are upset, but like, we just had too many expenses. And I was like, well, apparently not if you're making that much money. Like
my favorite tone deaf quote is that Pichai then joked that leadership should hold a Finance 101 TED Talk for employees.
That's dangerous. That's like guillotine territory. You can't just say that out loud.
That is smart people take their ball and start up a new company that you'll have to buy for billions of dollars in a few years after they really figure out something magical and amazing, which is what I hope some of the people laid off from Google do, because they definitely have the talent to do that.
There are two paths diverging in a meadow. One is start your own startup, and the other is guillotine. Pick your side.
Speaking of the two sides,
Dell to color code staff based on how hybrid they really are in return to office rush.
So Dell, which is wild because Dell historically has been a very remote work oriented company, but now they're saying, oh, let's do a return to office push. And so they're doing a return to office push that is more of a return to office than existed in the pre-pandemic days. And everybody that has done any work or had any experience with Dell is sort of pointing that out. But as part of their retention benefits promotion packages, you're not going to get any of those things if you're not actually in the office most of the time.
Yeah, so the color system is hilarious. It's like it goes blue to red, I think, or blue to yellow. Or no, it is red. So the hilarious part of this is that my younger cousin, who is, I think, 7 now, actually has a similar system at his elementary school, and he comes in and brags like, I've stayed on green all day today. And now they're doing this with fully grown adults.
I love this quote the Register found. I'm not going to say it because of the algorithm, but there you go.
I can't read it from here. They'll have to look at it on the
It's
screen.
a show. It's a show. Yeah, so this is not looking good for Dell, especially with like, it's not, I don't know.
Imagine like doing your like yearly whatever, like review or whatever, and they're like, well, we really love the work you've been doing, and you're really making us a lot of money, but I couldn't help but notice you're on yellow a lot.
I wonder if groups of friends will get together. It's like, okay, the 5 of us are going to take turns going into the office every day. So each of us will only go in 1 day a week, but we will rotate all 5 badges. And so like you're doing a relay race where, like Bob goes in on Monday and badges all 5 of us in. And then at the end of the day, Bob drops off the thing. And, just you get crazy stuff like that. It's like, oh, everybody was working all week.
Everybody's on blue. That's going to happen. Someone's going to find a way to cheat that system.
Speaking of companies that want to be on blue.
Apple to power AI tools with in-house server chips this year.
This is really just... I read this as the same tone as Apple is getting in on the whole self-driving things. Apple is wanting to get in on the AI thing, but they want to get in on the AI thing in maybe a different way than most people understand, I think. I think they want to get in on the AI thing on local devices to the extent that they can have a large language model or something interactive like Siri, but that isn't as dumb as a sack of potatoes. So you could talk to the local language model on your iPhone and get it to set an appointment or ask it what time it is or what time zone. It's like, what time is it in Taipei or something like that. And it can probably integrate with cloud services and do stuff and like do all these standard issue Apple stuff. But they want to turn it into just something that you can talk to and like common things that you want to do. And it's like, hey, will you bring the documents over from my iMac that are about the big presentation? And it's like, do you mean these files? Yes. Okay, let's bring those over. That kind of stuff. Not competition with OpenAI, let's say.
People really not going to understand folder structure at all.
No. Yeah. And so I think that Apple will probably be able to come up with some interesting large language model based experiences based on the work that they're doing. And they probably will have some server side hardware to integrate with that. But they really don't have, they've got the ARM chips, but they really don't have anything server side that truly sets them apart. Like you would think that the unified architecture, like one of the big things that Apple has going for it with the M architecture is unified, GPU memory and system memory. Like we need that on PC side. We need that on servers, like the servers with lots of Blackwell GPUs from NVIDIA or like MI300s. What AMD is doing with the A300, I think is a little bit held back because the software stack is so dumb. And Apple's kind of ahead there, I think. And so they're not leveraging that to the extent that they should be, though. So I don't know. Fun times. We'll see. Speaking of things that aren't being leveraged like they should.
Raspberry Pis get a built-in remote access tool, Raspberry Pi Connect.
Had no one told them about RustDesk? RustDesk is like they should have just done a RustDesk based thing.
I'm always blown away by names of tech things sometimes.
RustDesk is like a free team viewer. It's amazing. But it's written in Rust, so it's secure. And you can self-host it, which is also, it ticks all my boxes. But this is basically saying, oh, you've only got so many free cloud real VNC slots. And it's like, real VNC, like, it's not, you don't get hardware acceleration. And it just kind of like, no, it's not very good unless the resolution is tiny. Meanwhile, you can do hardware acceleration with, like, RDP. You can do RDP on Linux, and it's good with hardware acceleration. Yep. That's a whole other conversation. Oh, yeah.
This one was good. Yeah.
Apple had their big event where they announced the new iPad and the new M4 chips, which are about 3% faster IPC, but have slightly higher clocks out the box. So maybe 7% overall performance improvement, maybe from early benchmarks. And nobody liked the commercial, or at least
Most people didn't, I think.
at least some people
They're very vocal about
about
it.
it.
Yeah,
Not liking
Apple slammed by users over iPad Pro crush ad, fascist aesthetic.
It is interesting, yeah.
You talked about Tempest in a Teacup. I don't think this really matters ultimately, but like it is kind of a dark ad. And what was interesting about it is that other people produced a version where it's just reversed, where it's like everything springs out of the iPad instead. And it was like, this would have been a much more positive looking message if it was just reversed. Like, why would you crush everything?
Well, because hydraulic press. I mean, the hydraulic,
I mean, it did look cool. I'll give him that.
So they crushed an arcade machine and a piano and a bunch of things. It's like, we're crushing all of this so that it fits in the iPad. Because the iPad is new and amazing and blah, blah, blah. Marquez Brownlee did a video on it where, they gave him early access. And hopefully this hasn't ruined his ability to get early access. And he, in the nicest possible way, he's just like, okay, this is really great, but how are you supposed to actually use this incredible horsepower that's in here? Like, it's inaccessible. It's in an iPad. The iPad OS is a limitation. The keyboard stuff is a bit of a limitation. It has a really, like, they've taken an OLED screen and they've done 3 layers of OLED so that each one of them doesn't really have to run at a really high brightness, which is a great way to address longevity. But also, when you do need 1,000 nits of brightness, you can deliver it now because they just took 3 OLED screens, sandwiched them all together, and said, look, it's one screen. That is okay. I mean, in a true Apple fashion, like spare no expense, that might be a reasonable solution to have an incredible OLED display.
I think they redid the pencil again as well.
Oh, yeah, there's a new pencil.
But someone pointed this out to me, and now I can't stop thinking about it, is that someone was like, this is like the third or fourth Apple Pencil, and they still haven't figured out, wouldn't it be cool if the back was actually like an eraser?
Yeah, no.
Baffling.
It is very, very odd that they would do that. I think
An undo button, but in the back.
I think also, like, when I first saw this, the crush thing reminded me of the old, you probably haven't seen it, but the 1984 commercial where they're running, it's the Macintosh debut commercial where they're running and the runner throws the hammer through the screen and it's like, we're breaking out of the doldrums of IBM. It looks like the Crushinator is in the doldrums of IBM. Like,
Yeah, it is. It's a very dark aesthetic. It's curious.
Yeah. So,
Curious creative direction.
what would Steve
Usually-
Jobs say?
Usually they do really colorful, like fun ads, and this wasn't. I mean, it was a little bit fun because it is fun to watch things being crushed, but it feels a little dark.
Yeah, all of the color came from things dying
Yeah,
or being crushed.
yeah.
Ars Technica has a reasonable technical write-up, announces the M4 with more CPU cores and AI focus just months after the M3. Woo. This is the part where it's like 7% performance improvement, maybe? At most 3% IPC.
The other big story about the Apple event, which ended up being a nothing burger, so I didn't include it, is that in one of those ads, they mentioned Procreate, and the way it was worded, it sounded like Procreate, which is like a creative app a lot of people use, was going to go to subscription model, and everyone online lost their shit collectively.
Because Procreate is not garbage software. And
Yeah,
it's not Adobe.
it's a one-time payment. You pay I paid $10. I think now it's $13. And then you have it forever. And they were like, I'm not going to pay a subscription. And then I think later that day, Procreate had to come out and be like, no, we're not doing a subscription service. We're never going to do that. And I wonder now.
What a wild idea, software that you just buy.
I wonder if they're going to try to sneak that in and later, but got freaked out by people freaking out online.
Speaking of new things that Nintendo will soon want you to buy.
Nintendo confirms it will announce Switch successor console within this fiscal year.
Well, I mean, it has been, like a decade?
Yeah, but not before June, says the article.
Okay. There's been a bunch of leaks. Don't believe the leaks about battery life and everything else. Those might be prototypes or something, but I don't know.
I love leaks. It's something about that. It really, reading leaks really appeals to me. It's the same part of me that when I read a new book, I always read the last page. I want to spoil it for myself.
It's another missort.
Oh, Apple unveils stunning new iPad Pro with the world's most advanced display, M4 chip, and Apple Pencil Pro.
Yeah, here's just the Apple.com newsroom version. So
No, this is the fluff piece.
So when Apple says it's the most advanced, it's like,
I forgot to look. Does this Apple Pencil still require you uncap it and charge it?
no, it's different.
Is it the
now.
magnetic one? Because I have the magnetic one, which I vastly prefer. But the first Apple Pencil, and I think the third, you had to unplug it and like stick it into the side, and it made no sense.
The Verge noticed that some things had to go away as a result of that.
Well, this is an old model. Apple quietly kills the old school iPad and its headphone jack. This was the iPad 9, I think.
And the 10th generation iPad got cheaper and is now $349. Yeah, the pricing on the new iPads is sort of nuts. It is as much as a laptop. And
Cheap.
yeah, it seems like they would probably bend easy. But
Yeah, it was like, it's thinner. And I was like, that's not really a selling point for me. But okay.
this thing also lost a selling point with me. This is something else.
Elon Musk's Neuralink reports trouble with first human brain chip. It is apparently disconnecting randomly, and they're not sure why.
They say that they probably have got it fixed. Like it has physically retracted inside his brain, and so they're like, oh, we'll fix that. Part of it may be because they introduced air bubbles inside his cranial cavity, which
Oh, that seems like, I don't know a whole lot about the brain, but it seems like I shouldn't have a bunch of air in there. But
any neurosurgeons in the comments want to weigh in. It's like, is that a big deal? Will it work itself out? Like, it's like, oh, I can feel an air bubble in my brain when I shake
tilt
my head.
Yeah,
It's a bit of an issue. This is also a little bit of an issue. This is
funny.
Has blown up into a bit of an issue for Hertz Rent-A-Car.
Hertz charges Tesla Model 3 renter $277 for gas, and it won't back down.
So this guy recorded it. It's called its support, and it's like, well, I rented a Tesla, and I actually got the thing where it said that I don't have to fill it up.
You just have to charge it back to the level the battery was, I think, before.
No, the service is not even charging. Like, you don't fill it up, and you don't have to charge it up at all. But he did drop it off with the same charge level that it had when he picked it up.
Oh, well, that's a 96%.
But theoretically, he didn't have to do that. And so they doubled down and were like, no. Even if he hadn't done that, even if he hadn't gotten the service, the most he should have been charged was $25, according to the contract, not $277. So a number of things have gone wrong here. And finally, after the story was published, the customer care said that they'll be reaching out to him to refund the enormous charge.
They originally didn't want to even do that because they said, well, we've already closed the account.
Yeah, we've already closed the contract.
So there's nothing we can do.
That seems really dumb.
When I had that rental car and I had to go return it the other week, I actually took pictures of the car. I took pictures of myself returning the key, or I took a video, and I was like, I want to have proof. And this guy thankfully kept his receipts.
Can you imagine, okay, let's say that I had a car and I just wanted to loan you the car because your car got crushed by a tree on the Appalachian Trail. And it's and then it's like, let's say it was a Tesla, and the Tesla was like, oh, you're loaning your car to somebody, we're going to need a $50 fee. That seems weird, doesn't it?
It does.
What if it was books instead of cars?
Inside libraries battle for better ebook access.
So it turns out libraries, when they have electronic books, they pay a higher price. They can't
$55 for 2 years, and then they have to re-up it.
Or 26 loans. You can only loan it out 26 times, and then you have to pay $55.
Which I'm pretty sure some of the physical books at our library have been around for decades.
Yeah, I can definitely think of some of the books that I've checked out. The library card is filled, and that's 20 slots on two sides.
Yeah.
So that's at least 40 times. And some of those books go back to the 80s.
Yeah.
But imagine designing books to only last that long deliberately. It's just, I don't know, the mind reels, but publishers really don't like libraries and really want libraries to pay more for both physical books that they loan out as well as electronic books. And Axios has an article here about the struggle that librarians have. And some libraries pay for these platforms that provide ebooks and provide the ability for people to check out ebooks. And there are controls on that. So when you check it out, it stops working after 3 days, or it stops working after 2 weeks, or whatever it is. But then when it's been checked out 20 times, you have to buy a new one.
That's just stupid. Especially because the prices are so high.
Yeah,
$55 for an ebook. Come on.
Publishers really, really want this, but this is not
Those are textbook prices.
Yeah. I mean, it is just.
And at least you can resell the textbook.
I'm not okay with this. I think it should be. I think like book publishers. The problem really comes down to book publishers want the book to be treated like a license in every scenario, except for in pretty much every scenario except for a couple of narrow exceptions. And in the narrow exceptions, they want it to be treated like a piece of physical, tangible property. And so it is always the thing that best benefits the book publishers. When I think books should be treated like a physical piece of property. If I buy a book, I should have the right to format shift it. I can take my book and I can put it in a book scanner and back it up. And as long as I own the book, I have the right to use it and do everything that I want with it. I can even loan it to somebody as long as I don't look at the book that I physically have. Like anything that would be physically impossible to do with just one book. It's like, okay, I've got a book in my library, but I've loaned it to somebody. It's like, you call them and it's like, are you looking at it right now? No. Okay, I'm going to look at my instance of the book. It's like, okay, because the magic of that kind of thing, maybe that's fine. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, Steam kind of does that, right? With like if you're like friends and family or whatever, where you can like loan games to each other.
Yeah,
but only one person can play it at a time.
One thing that is, well, they changed that recently. But one thing that is annoying is that if I've got two computers that have Steam, I can't be in two different games at the same time on two different computers, which is annoying. And
with all the testing that goes on here.
Yeah, a little annoying. This is also
a little annoying.
A little annoying.
Prime Video subs will soon see ads for Amazon products when they hit pause.
Well, I mean,
I won't be seeing them because I'll be in the bathroom. Actually, I don't use Prime Video, so.
This is another one of those things like the Sony Helldivers thing where it's like nobody wants this, but people will tolerate it to a point because of the other thing that they have. And it's just like, that's not the same thing. Like Amazon is not innovating with their ability to get return on shareholder investment. They're just... They're
just reinventing cable.
They're poisoning it to the point that most people will tolerate the awfulness, not providing something that's delightful.
I mean, they just added ads as well, like just ads in the middle of your program. Plus, when you pause it, you're going to see ads. Like, come on.
If that's the trajectory that we're heading toward, is like everything that you interact with will be annoying just below the threshold that you won't tolerate using it. Like, what kind of existence is that? It's terrible.
Not one.
Speaking of what sort of existence is Stack Overflow relegated to in the world of AI?
Stack Overflow is feeding programmers answers to AI whether they like it or not.
This is a little bit of drama this week too, because if you posted stuff to Stack Overflow and you found out that they were doing this and you went and you started changing your answers or deleting your answers,
they reverted it.
It's interesting. It's like sorry, your ability to protest against Stack Overflow's decision to feed your answers to AI. You're not a part of that decision.
You're not allowed to opt out either, which seems kind of not great.
Fun times. This is also a really interesting read from this week.
Pokemon Go players invent fake beaches on real maps to catch rare Wiglets.
So OpenStreetMap is an open map platform thingy, and a bunch of people have been submitting fake beaches to it because it's what Pokemon Go uses to decide where Pokemon spawn. So there's a lot of fake beaches in places that don't exist because people wanted to get Pokemon that only spawn at beaches.
That's really funny to me. I can't believe people are still playing Pokemon Go. I remember for a while there was a gym across from our office, and you would see people like wandering around with their phones.
Wandering into traffic, the sound of people slamming on brakes and tires screeching.
Screaming,
yeah. No, it's really interesting. This is not the first time that this has happened in our next story, but it's perhaps one of the more recent times.
I'm going to expose my Cogent Communications offers $206 million in secured notes backed by IPv4 addresses.
So basically they said, hey, we've got this asset, which is IPv4 addresses. There can only be at most 4 billion of them in the whole wide world. We got a lot of them. We think they're worth a lot of money, and they are. So they're using that as a security for financing, which is interesting and not necessarily wrong. It's just interesting that has become an asset. It's like an accidental asset, I guess would be the way to describe that. I don't know.
Oh, this is what I was thinking of earlier.
Oh, yeah, the Microsoft one that you alluded to.
Yeah, Microsoft wipes out evidence of real ads in Windows 11 start menu.
Yeah, so they were putting ads, you can kind of see back here, and it's like, wait a minute.
Let's ruin this experience even more.
We're gonna turn the start menu from this into this, And also with these apps that are just not installed on your computer, but it's just like, you probably
should have
want
them.
this. Yeah, so it's like, oh, Windows 11 settings app no longer mentions real ads for the start menu. Because people didn't like that. Again, it's the race to turn the system into the worst possible experience that you will just barely tolerate. Like, it's going to be just below the threshold of what you will not tolerate. And what a great design philosophy for your things. So we don't want to make this amazing. We want to make it as bad as it can possibly be, just slightly better than that.
My favorite weird experience I've had recently was I went to look up Teams, like in the menu like that, and it pulled up Teams like the old version. And I was like, but I know I have the new Teams installed. And it was just like, no, click on the old version. And then I have to click it, open it up, and it's like, go to the new version. I'm like,
Yeah.
you own this software. Like, why can't you find the new version? Why do I have to open the old one and then go to the new one? That makes no sense.
Speaking of things that make no sense,
Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery to launch Disney Plus Hulu Max streaming bundle. Like a cable bundle.
Yeah. You can get these two things together for cheaper.
I don't want that.
No one wants that. You're going to
Never
pay more
sail-
money for less.
Sail the high seas.
Speaking of paying more for less,
This was a design story. I've never used this app, though. Sonos says its controversial app redesign took, quote, courage.
yeah, so the new Sonos app, music app, I guess, is less functional. If
Yeah.
you've used this, engagement challenge below, it's
I looked it up on some other like design sites, and people said that the new app is faster, which is good, and that it is like generally better. But there are certain features they've removed. Like one thing they said was like volume control now doesn't have a number. So that was one thing people were mad about. I think like the playlist queue you couldn't edit anymore. So like you just put something in there and then it was in there forever, or you had to clear it completely.
how will I know that the volume is on an even number now?
Yeah, I know. I was like, I can't just have a slider. I need a number. So I did understand why some people were upset, though. They mentioned that they were hoping to add some of those features back, but they didn't give an ETA on that. So
I have some bad news if you've ever been a Dell customer, ever.
Dell discloses data breach of customers' physical addresses.
Yeah, it's service tags and service contracts and your physical address and a whole bunch of details. Basically, anybody can look up your service tag and your invoice and your address and see where it was sent and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So this is wild. Dell's website used to actually let you do this, and then somebody pointed out this was kind of insane. And yeah, sorry.
It's a typical security. I guess that could have been under security, huh?
Yeah. Also, if you've ever done any work with the Patent and Trademark Office,
U.S. Patent and Trademark Office confirms another leak of filers' address data.
fabulous. Just fabulous. It's great.
Feels good.
Yeah, it's just fabulous.
Positive.
Just why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? This one's also kind of clever, but also, why is this happening?
Ransomware crooks now SIM swap executives' kids to pressure their parents.
Basically, corporate IT is taking care of the executives' phones. Those are pretty locked down. But it turns out their kids' phones are not very locked down at all. So you figure out that some CEO has a kid somewhere. You can get their social media posts, maybe impersonate them using AI, trick their parents into doing very bad things.
That is dark. That's a dark reality that we're living in.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I just read, my brain just registered that we're actually in security now because I'm so used to doing it Monday. I was like, oh, there's a lot of security stories all in a row. Weird.
Speaking of which,
US UK police identify and charge Russian leader of Lockbit ransomware gang.
so this is a little bit wild. The dude got wind of this and has been posting on social media. He's also not wearing his ear pods correctly. Like, far be it from me to criticize.
I don't like earpods. I don't like something in my ear.
But he was posting something on social media in like a sports car or a boat or something. So he doesn't seem too worried. You know who else is not too worried about its problems?
Apple iPhone spyware problem is getting worse. Here's what you should know.
So this is from Wired. And Wired has a pretty good rundown of all the things that we're complaining about. And it really is wild that Apple doesn't seem to be hiring the kinds of security minds that they should be hiring to get to the bottom of their security problems. I worry that perhaps someone has discovered an architectural flaw that has not been disclosed in the M architectures, and Apple is aware of that, and that's why they're just like, well, we're not going to be able to do much to fix this.
Let's just keep spending that money on ads and making the iPad thinner.
This also is more of an alarmist headline than it is in reality.
Novel attack against virtually all VPN apps neuters their entire purpose.
So this is from Ars Technica. The one situation where this is perhaps bad is hotels and coffee shops and things like that. If the DHCP server can be compromised, the DHCP server can pass something to your client device and say, oh, are you trying to get to these popular VPN providers? You're going to have to go this other way through the internet. And so in doing that, it's going to cause your VPN connection to not connect the way that you expect to. And you may end up leaking information about the kind of traffic that is on your VPN, because that traffic ends up not actually going through the VPN that you think it is. So, yeah.
I like the art on this article. It's just a man crawling through tubes.
It's like reading, dropping, or modifying VPN traffic. It's like, yeah, it's because you're advertising a route to those subnets through DHCP, which is kind of a feature, not a bug, but, that's okay. That's fun. It's wild that no network engineers had noticed this before to be like, wait a minute. This is a thing we have to worry about, like in the VPN client software or something like that. So this also should have been sorted with the Lockbit thing.
Police resurrect Lockbit's site and troll the ransomware gang.
This has been a little bit of a back and forth. The site was up, it was down, then it was up again.
Probably covered in logos now.
Yeah, so it's just fun times. They're trying to keep Lockbit completely shut down, but we'll see. This one was also a little bit scary because there's a popular subculture on the internet of people that have been hacking their own insulin monitor and insulin pump. Like they've done a DIY thing where it's they're fully closed loop, fully cyborg to be app controlled instead of just monitoring it and then dialing it themselves. And so one of the first apps that actually got FDA approval ran into a bug.
An insulin pump software bug has injured over 200 people.
So the FDA has issued the highest level of recall for the insulin pumps app because it's got some bugs. And this is wild because I don't think there was ever anything this severe when people were DIYing this.
Well, if you're DIYing it, I mean, you probably know what's going on.
You're going to be a little bit more paranoid about what's happening.
Whereas someone's like, oh, I can just use this app. Like, they've done the thinking for me. And you would hope that would be true, but... Yeah,
see also the iPhone story where we literally apparently don't have the hardware architecture vernacular to build a secure platform. And so it's just like, oh, look, somebody in some country that has the Pegasus ransomware has control of my insulin pump. Joy.
Great. I don't need that to live.
And this sounds like it's a repeat. It's not.
Cyber attack disrupts operations at major U.S. healthcare network.
Turns out those get headlines. And so guess what is now being... It's like, oh, we'll focus on the hospitals. Yeah. Patient data, hospital, just disrupting the machines. I hope you didn't want an x-ray today.
We can fit you in another 6 months.
Yeah. And this is kind of related to the AI CEO's kids story.
I assume this is British Columbia. BC mother targeted by AI phone scam, initially convinced it was her son.
Yeah, her son had it posted prolifically on social media. So, she got a call. It's like, oh, that sounds like him. It was not. And then it was then the call was handed off to someone posing as a police officer. It's like, oh, you're going to have to send us some money. It's like, okay, I guess that's fine. It was a scam. It's all a scam.
I feel like I should probably warn my mother about this because she would probably fall for something like that. She's in danger. I've got to help her.
Yeah, that's never a good thing.
Yeah.
There's going to be more of this as the barrier to entry becomes lower and it becomes easier. But also, I think we've long since passed... think about the Nigerian scam emails. It's like, oh, I'm trying to get some money out of the country.
The Nigerian prince.
And all the people that fell for that. And even through its broken English and everything else. The large language models now will help them write really much more coherent emails and much more reasonable sounding emails. And that seems like a problem. And I don't think AI alignment is ever going to be able to help us with that problem in the way that... a hammer was like, oh, you're using this hammer to bludgeon a human skull. I should not be a hammer anymore. It's like We're not going to be able to do that.
It's too late.
Reality doesn't work that way. At least I don't think it does. So, yeah, fun times. Well, we got a lot of nonsense on Friday.
We do. And also AI. So we'll see you then. Bye.